You lose more life trying to optimize everything than just living it. The stress of trying to be perfect is killing you more quickly than your imperfections.
Nothing great was ever achieved by people who tried to be great at all things. And so
America was built on the backs of men who smoked cigarettes, drove without seatbelts, and had bacon for breakfast. If you miss your biohacking routine this morning, you're going to be okay. There's a time for leverage, but there's also a time for violence, which is just brute force. People get really obsessed with optimal, which is getting the most bang for your buck, but there's also maximizing, which is just getting the most bucks. You lose more life trying to optimize everything than just living it. The stress of trying to be perfect is killing you more quickly than your imperfections.
I think that's an ode to being willing to take huge amounts of imperfect action towards one goal and being willing to sacrifice other things for an extended period of time, despite the fact that other people will say they're making a sacrifice. Like when we enter seasons, I call it, the season of no, which is where I have an extended duration where I say no to almost everything. And most people say that's unbalanced. And they hurl that as though it's a bad thing. They're like, that's so unbalanced. And you're like, yes, that's the point. Because if I had a balanced outcome, then I won't have the outsized return on this one thing. And so, again, like there's so many of these little insults that people will throw at you, like you're unbalanced, you changed, that they intend as insults. But if you actually don't take your society programmed response and say, oh, they mean to insult me. But if you actually think about what they're saying something that's true. And then we just need to be okay with that truth because that was the choice we made to begin with. And so I think about that a lot, which is like, how many things do people tell me that they intend to insult me with that I can take as a compliment?
Didn't someone bump into Layla walking down the street?
Yeah. It happened so recently. So yeah, we're walking in the street. Someone bumps into her. We don't always walk like side by side because there's lots of people. So we like split up sometimes. Anyway, she comes back to me and she was like, guess what this guy just said? And I was like, what? And she was like, he called me a skinny bitch. And I was like, what? But she seemed so happy. And I was like, I just kind of shook my head, like, tell me more, like, explain. And she was like, I mean, he said I was skinny. And I was like, this is the perfect example of him hurling an insult and her choosing not to be insulted.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
No, but really.
Yeah. Do you really mean it? Yeah. I wonder how many times we've been insulted, even in my younger days where someone said something to me that like, if I had my current brain, I could have been like, you really mean it? Thanks, man. And, yeah, like so unbalanced. I remember I took that as such an insult for such a long period of time. Now, part of that was because when I was being brought up, balance was like one of the big frames of my household, was like, you have to be balanced, which really just meant you have to be awesome at everything. But balance was the word. So being unbalanced was a term that was used as an insult. And so for so many years, I wanted to be balanced. But then I was like, well, nothing great was ever achieved by people who tried to be great at all things. And so I was like, okay, I might not have a great relationship for a long period of time. I mean, there was like, a lot of people don't know this, but in the early days of our relationship, even when we were married, I told Leia, so the first 3 years, I said the business comes before our marriage. So a lot of people don't know that. And I was like, well, to me, it made sense. It was like, most people break up over money. The business makes money. So the business feeds us and then we will be okay. And that was kind of my thinking around it. And we eventually flipped that and said, like, if we're good, the business will be fine. But it took 3 years to get there. But all that to say, like, I think having periods of imbalance, and maybe, to be fair, if I hadn't had that priority at that time, maybe Gym Launch wouldn't have been what it became. And so I can't look back and say, like, I should have done it different, because it's really easy to say that now. But like, I might not be here to say that if I had been that way.
Oliver Burkeman's got this great frame where he talks about choose in advance what you're going to suck at.
Oh, yeah.
It's in 4,000 weeks. And if you are a type A go-getter person who has what I call the curse of competence, your options in life are restricted more by what you choose than what you can do. Mm-hmm. You will feel disquiet when something that you used to be great at begins to slip because you've focused your attention elsewhere. You used to be in really great shape. You said that one of your goals this year was to get a raise, or to be able to buy your first house, or to find a partner, or to do whatever. Hey, guess what? If you're spending 4 or 5 nights a week going to places where you can maybe date, or going out on dates, or doing whatever, you're probably not going to have as much time to dedicate to the gym. Yeah. If you want to get that raise or be able to save for your first house or whatever, you're going to have to work later, which maybe means that your friends are going to drop off. If you pick whatever the thing is, there is a price that you begin to pay. And this cycle began for me so frequently toward the back end of my 20s, where I would dedicate myself to a thing, then something else would begin to slip. So I would then go, ooh, I'll just give a little bit. I'll just give a little bit to that. And it's not an additive system, it's multiplicative. It's not 2 plus 3, it's 2 times 3. And that means that the more that you attend to the thing that you say that you're going to do, the more the gains accrue to you. And then you can still pivot back, but you need to periodize things. And this is a frame that I wish, even now, it's still something that I struggle with, realizing that now isn't forever. The thing that you're doing right now doesn't need to be forever. Yeah. If you are coming out the back of the searching for the partner thing and you're like, hey, guess what? I gained 15 pounds. Yeah. So, all right, well, dedicate yourself for the next 6 months to going to the gym. But this isn't the rest of your life.
Right.
And once that thing's done, oh, well, guess what? I'm back to, 12% body fat. I feel great about myself. What's next? It's not forever.
Yeah. It's just for now.
Yes.
We have a frame that we actually use a lot. I always think about these things from a business context, but they end up retroactively, applying to life. But when we're making big strategic decisions, we say, which problems would we prefer? And so rather than talking about the gains and what's the upside, if we have let's say we're going to make a big investment in software for this company, or we're going to make a big, a new service line, or we're going to just decide to develop a physical product, right? I mean, I know you were literally on the just back half of a big decision like this yourself. It's okay, let's imagine what the problems are going to be if we decide to do this new service category. Well, some people are going to complain that they're not getting results from this thing. We're going to have a ton we might have some negative reviews in the short term that we're going to have to deal with. Let's look at what happens when one of our favorite customers tells us to fuck off. Let's really sit in what each of these problems is. And then when we spell out all of the problems and we don't even think about the upside, say, which of these problems do we prefer and which are we more equipped to deal with? Sometimes we have really amazing innovation and, in my opinion, really solid decision making that comes afterwards that minimizes kind of the post-decision regret, because we also know what negatives would have come with the path unchosen. Because most times our regrets come from the path unchosen because we imagine it only with the upside. We only think about, I think there's a book where a girl lives many different versions of her life. And
Midnight Library.
Yes. And the thing is that there's these pieces of her life that she imagines are going to be amazing, but then she realizes her best friend's dead, or all of a sudden she's pregnant. And you're like, whoa, what happened? And so we don't take into account on the paths not taken the things that we would have lost along the way. And so I think really good decision making and also regret minimization is that when you make the decision, you think about the downsides too, and you remember what those downsides are. And for me, that has been one of my strongest frames for I didn't decide to do that. Were all that? Oh yeah, those were a lot. I'm glad those are problems I'm very happy I don't have to deal with now.